Hi, my name is Emeka Morrow, and welcome to Growth is Personal. Each week, I share insights and strategies that will equip you to accelerate your personal and professional growth and bring you conversations that will empower you to thrive in life, career, and business. Okay, welcome once again to Growth is Personal podcast. We're glad to be back again, having our conversations around personal and professional growth. With me on the show this morning, it's morning here, it's afternoon over there in Matt's time, but I have a fantastic and phenomenal guest this morning. His name is Matt Lesser. Matt started his career leading his family's struggling business. It quickly failed and Matt experienced a suicidal depression. Out of the ashes, a new business emerged and grew from 3 people to nearly 200 while experiencing a 20-fold increase in revenue before selling to trusted competitors. Matt had then served in C-suite roles in private equity, banking, and commercial uniforms before founding Uniquely Normal, LLC, to help leaders build flourishing organizations. Matt is the best-selling author of unSatisfied, When Less is More, and has spoken to and facilitated rooms packed with leaders around the world for now more than 20 years. Matt's second book, unEngaged, Building Flourishing Organizations, will be released in late September 2023. Matt lives in northeastern Indiana with his family. Welcome to the show, Matt. It's good to have you here.
Thank you so much. I have been looking forward to our conversation today.
Yes. I look forward to, each time I have opportunity to have this conversation, it blows my mind that, I get to meet different, people from all across the world, having these conversations, and I get to hear them firsthand before our audience gets to hear them. So it's been a lot, an enjoyable journey for me and a good learning experience. So we're
I
going to
love
go
it.
right into the conversation today. I'm curious when I saw your book, Unsatisfied, and I saw even your brand name. Uniquely Normal. So I said there's something about there's something about the you around, your brand. So we're going to talk about when less is more today. And it's quite interesting because we live in the age where more is more appreciated. Like everything has to be fast, everything has to be quick, microwave experience is what people are looking for. So I'm curious to have this conversation around when less is more. So can you explain what the concept is when you say less is more, and how does it apply to a personal and professional development?
No, I'd love to. That is a great question. And it's something that I'm passionate about personally, but also professionally. And then when I talk with other leaders. And so where the name Uniquely Normal came from is out of years of traveling and talking with and working with leaders literally all over the world. And especially in my time when I was in private equity, and I got to meet, I can't tell you how many different leaders, but I would ask them to share their story with me. I was looking for investment opportunities on behalf of our private equity firm, and they would share with me their stories. And usually the story went something like this: I sacrificed everything. And when they said everything, what they meant was I sacrificed usually their marriages and their kids. I
Hmm.
sacrificed that because I wanted to build something that I thought would bring us collectively as a family lasting happiness, joy, peace, income potential, and we'd be able to do whatever we wanted to do. We'd have flexibility, we'd have money, we'd have whatever it is. And now here I am talking to these leaders, and it wasn't just in when I share this story. Usually people are like, "Oh, that's just U.S. based." And honestly, it wasn't. It was U.S. It was Canada. It was Europe, both Western and Eastern Europe. It was Africa, and primarily Eastern Africa, some in South Africa. That I was talking with leaders, and they were saying the same thing to me of saying, "If I could do it all over again, I would do it so much differently." And now these are people toward the end of their career. Now, most of them were in their 60s. And
Hmm.
they're at the point of saying, I don't want my business anymore because I sacrificed everything to get this. And so the more I heard this story, the more I'm like, you know what, this story has to be told, because what we are told, especially in Western society, right? Europe and America, Canada especially, is if you just have a little bit more of this, or if you accomplish this, or you reach this level of success in your career, or you get this many zeros in your bank account or your investment portfolio or whatever it is, then you will be happy, you'll be satisfied. And what I have found in my, now over 30 years of being involved in professionally and in the workforce and so forth, is that's a lie. It does not work. The more that I get, the more that I want. There's never enough. Even John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest men ever lived. I mean, it was Andrew Carnegie, one of the two. Anyway, they're both really rich guys. When they were asked, how much is going to be enough before you feel satisfied, before you have enough, and their answer was iconic. It's just a little bit more. And so, it does not satisfy. And so when I wrote this book, I was writing it from the perspective of what does satisfy, what does bring satisfaction, what brings lasting peace, lasting satisfaction and joy in life, and versus these other things that we think will, but actually don't.
Hmm. Hmm. I mean, what you're saying now, I'm glad, because part of our audience, people from the ages of 25 to 45, and I think this is really applicable to to them and to us, at this time, because we don't want to get to 60 before we realize that this is I mean, this is the way it should be. We should be able to live a life that is fulfilled, like we're living a fulfilled life, not at the expense of our personal life, or the expense of family, or the expense of the things that we really desire, right? So building a career that is designed in such a way that we're still living life to the fullest. We're happy where we are, right? So I'm glad that we're having this conversation. Let's go into, how does the pursuit of simplicity and minimalism contribute to a more fulfilling life? And why I ask this question is, the popular saying that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication, but people tend to always want to over the belief that sophistication is is a way to look cool, and sometimes they overestimate what it means to be sophisticated. So they want to have this, I want to have that. For example, someone says, I want to start a podcast, but I have to have a studio, I have to have all the lights. I mean, I'm right now in my living room. I'm having a podcast, and done over 60 episodes, and also top 10 in Canada, just in the house here. Like,
Wow.
no fancy studio, right? So
Yeah.
how can we, how can we have a fulfilled life with this concept of simplicity and minimalism?
Oh man. Oh, I wish your podcast was 4 hours long and not just an hour, because you're hitting right at the heart of it, man. So wonderful question. That is a great question. I think two things come to mind. The first is the word intentional. If we really want to, so when I started writing this book, I was 45 years old, and I was already beginning to face these questions of, okay, what's going to bring me lasting satisfaction? What's going to bring me, because what I was working toward wasn't. And so here I was, and you mentioned, your podcast listeners are, in that 25 to 50 age range, 45 or age range. It's one of my passions is helping people equip them before they get to their 60s or whatever it is, and they realize, oh my goodness, I've made huge mistakes in my path, my journey. Because I think that if we start making decisions much younger, be very intentional of saying, okay, what is my purpose in life? What am I called to do? And this whole thing of calling it can be very confusing. It can be very ethereal and hard to grasp. But the way that I try to define it is, again, I try to get very simple about it. It's like, what are you passionate about? What are you really, really good at doing? How do other people say that what do other people affirm that you're good at doing? And then what do you feel is in your heart, whether it's your call to do? Some people, and sometimes go back to your childhood, right? Some people are called to be firefighters or police officers or lawyers or speakers or whatever it might be. Go back to those days. What were you passionate about doing? I have a good friend that and he will say that when he was in kindergarten, he was by like 6 years old, that the teacher in his quarterly report card would say that he has an uncanny ability to be able to organize. And so he realized at a young age that whatever he did as a profession, and he didn't know what that was, but he needed to be in a role where he was able to take chaos and make it organized.
Hmm.
And that's what he's done his entire career. And so it's those little things along the way. I call them breadcrumbs, right? Little breadcrumbs of life. What are those breadcrumbs for you that that you can look back on, that you can say, I'm really, really good at doing that, and other people affirm that in me. I'm passionate about doing, and so yeah, and I feel like I'm called to do that. And each person's different, and so that's why I use the word intentionality. Being intentional about what you do. And I think that many of the conversations I had with these leaders, I got this overwhelming sense of I wasn't intentional. I was not. I did a lot of things by accident, if you will, and this is where I wound up. And so it was almost the sense of helplessness.
Hmm.
And yet I was talking to many times very, very successful business people, men and women, that made, you'd look at their bank accounts or you'd look at where they were and say, how are you not satisfied? You're worth millions, but they weren't, because they had the sense that they didn't live their life intentionally and on purpose, for purpose, and with purpose.
Hmm. Intentionally. I think that word is almost overused now, but people still do not really think about it critically. Like how does it so let me ask you, what does it mean to be intentional? Like what what are the steps to become intentional if there is something like that? Like, because we there are words we use and we hear a lot, but
Yep.
people don't really think about it. That how do I become intentional? Like, what do I need to do, to become intentional? If you want to talk on that.
Wow. Again, another great question. How do I wish I could say that there's this magic formula, or there were these, hey, if you do these 4 steps, you're going to become intentional. I think a lot of it starts with a mindset of saying, I am no longer going to be a victim of my circumstances. I am now going to be a champion of my circumstances. And so if I don't like my career, if I don't like what I'm doing, I don't like my job, I don't like, what it is, if I feel like I'm lost, I'm going to seek help. I think that's the first step of, first of all, admitting I'm not satisfied. I am not fulfilled. I feel purposeless. I feel like I don't have any meaning in life. So admitting it and owning it and say, so I admit it, I own it, and then I'm going to do something about it. So that may be hiring a coach. It may be hiring a counselor. It may be, doing whatever it takes in order to, okay, how do I first get to know me? Because I need to understand me. I need to understand how I'm wired, what I'm gifted at, what I'm good at doing. And then I need to learn how to understand others. So the first 2 basic principles of emotional intelligence, right? Self-awareness, others awareness. I believe it starts there. And then it goes to, okay, so based on how I'm wired and how other people have affirmed me, what is it that I think that I'd be really good at doing and passionate about doing? And so it's these little steps along the way. First I'm going to know who I am, then I'm going to know others, and then I'm going to know what I'm good at doing. And each step just making these little decisions that lead to big decisions at the
Mm,
end.
mm. You nailed it there. You said decisions. So I think it really boils down to decision, right?
Yeah.
Where you
Yeah.
decide that I need to know who I am, and I need to also be able to do the things that are required for me to be on the other side of being intentional. What is the
Mhm.
outcome that I'm looking for, right? And then make a decision to start doing it, right? So let's talk about your personal story. What is your story around less is more? I read here, how your career, of a family struggling business, I like to touch on the personal, because when I see where people are today, we can look back at where they're coming from and get a context of what were the things that shaped you to embracing this concept of less is more. Like, what was your story around it?
Yeah. So I think for me, it probably started. Well, it probably started in my youth, quite frankly, where I had this mindset of, um, I'm going to show you. If you tell me I can't do something, my response was, oh yeah, watch me. You tell me I can't play this sport. You tell me I can't get this grade. You tell me I can't accomplish this goal. My mindset was always, oh yeah, watch me. And what that built in me was this sense of unhealthy independence and unhealthy reliance on me and what I can do. And so when I took over our family business, unexpected, and then it failed, I was immediately faced with problems that were bigger than me. I could not do this on my own. I had to have help. But
Mm,
yet my entire mindset was do it yourself. And so going through that experience taught me that I really do need other people in my life to help me. But yet I still had that mindset of, okay, you know what? In order to prove to the world, if you will, it started with proving to my dad. I need to prove to my dad that I'm good, that I'm better than he thinks I am, better than him, whatever. And then it built into, you know what? I need to prove to the world that I am successful, that I am this, that I am this, I am this. And I thought that meant I have to have bigger and better all the time, bigger career, bigger business, bigger success, bigger numbers in your bank account, whatever, bigger house, bigger cars, whatever it is. And so I had this mindset of, bigger and better is the path toward lasting satisfaction, reputation, and so forth.
mm,
And what I realized along the way was, and especially in talking to other people and in other leaders in particular, and then also realizing that my story was leading toward the same outcome that they had, I had this huge aha, these revelatory moments of,
mm.
if you're not careful, 15 years from now, that's going to be you, bud. And so you better change now. And so it was having these experience of, you know what, having more, having better isn't going to bring the kind of end result, the kind of satisfaction, the kind of joy that you think it will. It's going to be short lived. And so it required a complete transformation of the way I thought.
Hmm. Yeah. When you were sharing, a few things were coming to my mind as you were talking, because there's this idea that the more title. Let's talk about title, because in the workplace you see that people, based on society and what they see around them, they often feel like, when I get this particular title, I would have a fulfilling career, right? And there's this constant chase of the next title, or promotion and stuff like that. And then they get to that point and they were like, okay, is this all there is to life?
Right.
So I think that's having that mindset that it's not about what society dictates or tells you, that this is how to live life, this is how to have a rich life, or how to have a better life, right? But you knowing what does fulfillment means to you, what does having the best life mean to you. It could mean that I don't have to chase the title, I just have to chase experiences, and that experience could be that it's not something so grand, right? But yeah, I like the fact that you shared that that insight about that you had to get to the point where you realize that if you don't do something now, you're going to end up the way those people are. So
Yeah.
hmm, let's talk a little bit about what could be the strategies for people who want to have that, embrace that simplicity, embrace that less is more philosophy. What strategies can they adopt to be able to create a more space, right?
Mm-hmm.
More space, even though it's from a place of the concept or the philosophy of less is more, but creating more space for them to be able to grow and have that fulfillment. What are the practical strategies that you want to share?
I think that one of the things is you figure out the one, two, or maybe even three things that you're really passionate about doing and doing. I'm a big believer that concentration of effort is what leads to influence and impact. I think many times we get focused on, okay, I need more breadth. I'm convinced you need more depth. And
Hmm.
so I'm not going to focus on the 17 things that I can do. I'm going to focus on the two or three things that I can do really, really, really well. And I'm going to pour into those. And I'm going to focus on those because you know what, the other, I think I used 17. So the other 14 things, other people can do those really, really, really well. And so I'm going to rely on them to do that. And I'm going to focus on the one, two, three things that I know I can do well. So I think it
Hmm.
starts with that, getting very focused and getting honest with myself about what I'm really good at. You know, I know for a fact that I am not, excuse me, I am not good when it comes to extreme detail. So being an accountant, for example, that's not me. Can I do it? I can do it, but man, I'm going to be one miserable employee if that's going to be my job because that's just not me.
Hmm.
But there are wonderful accountants out there, wonderful people that do that. And so I think it's being honest with what I can do and what I'm wired to do, and then focusing on those and realizing, you know what, I'm okay with that. And again, it's a being intentional. I could keep coming back to that word, being intentional about what I'm doing, focusing, concentration of effort, and being diligent with those things that I have been entrusted with. And you know, I think so many times we get distracted by these shiny objects and we think, oh, I'm going to chase that. And we realize, uh-oh, that's not going to bring me what I thought it would. You know, and it's going inside too and trying to really understand, okay, my why. You know, it's one of the questions when I'm doing coaching, especially, I'll ask eventually, you know, what is your why? Why do you think you're here on this planet at this time in history? You know, why weren't you born 500 years ago? Or why weren't you born 500 years from now? So what is it that you think is your why at this point in history? And it's a wonderful exercise to begin to understand, you know, that what you can contribute to the world based on your gifting, your experiences, your skill sets, and your passions.
Hmm. I want to talk. I want to share more on that that depth part because you mentioned something that's very important. Because in these days, people, like you said, shiny object, they want to go for the next thing. So, for
Mm.
example, someone says, "I've been in this personal growth space for almost close to over 10 years now, and I've seen people who started this journey and they have gone to something else, because they feel like, oh, I'm not making any success from it, or I'm not, getting the result I want to see." But there's something about you mentioned about building depth. And when
Mm.
there's a good example of a bamboo tree. There's a bamboo tree. When you plant a bamboo tree, you don't get to see a bamboo, you don't get to see anything germinate. It takes like almost more than 5 years or so. But what it's doing, it's building depth. And when it comes out in few months or even weeks, it's all up. So I think it's so important to really emphasize this idea of building depth. Whatever it is that you're trying to do, whatever, like you said, discover what it is that you love to do, but spend time building depth in it. Because what we see is a lot of times people jump to the next thing because this idea of more pushes them to not build depth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you
You're
want
so
do you want
right.
to share more on that?
Well, I think you just did, my friend. I think you stated it very well. I think that when we focus on building depth, then breadth just kind of happens.
Hmm.
But I think so
Hmm.
many times we get focused on trying to build breadth that when things start to happen, we kind of get freaked out a little bit because we realize, oh, I don't have the proper depth to support the breadth that's happening.
Come on now.
And I spent most of my life trying to build breadth. I wanted a greater platform, I wanted a greater purpose, I wanted greater this, greater that. And it's only been literally over the last 5, 6 years that I realized, you know what, that's the wrong approach.
Hmm.
I need to go deep. I need to go deep in building my foundation of who I am, built on my core principles, my core values, and then over time, then letting the breath just kind of happen organically rather than me trying to push it before it's time.
Come on. I mean, anyone listening this should write this down. Like whatever it is that you're doing right now, the reason why you're not seeing results, like the reason why you probably are not seeing results, and you've been trying it, and you're not where you want to be. The question I want to ask you from what Matt has shared today is, have you really built depth? Because if you build depth, I mean, you're going to stand the test of time. You're going to have stability. You're going to have, I mean, you can tell the strength of a tree by the depth it has, right? And you will see that a tree, I'm just using the tree as an analogy. So a tree that has depth, oftentimes you see that it has more branches, it brings more leaf, and it attracts all the birds and the animals and stuff because it has depth. So the reason why you probably are not satisfied with where you are right now is because you haven't built depth. That's a food for thought.
That's good, man. That's really good.
Yeah. So let's talk about goals and priorities, right? When it comes to setting goals and priorities, I know you coach a lot of leaders. How do we strike a balance between ambition and the less is more philosophy?
Oh man, that's another really great question. You have a gift for asking great questions, man. I think it's actually the answer is what you just asked. It's balance. So, and I think again, it goes back to focus. I believe you need to have goals ahead of you to say, okay, what am I striving toward? But it's again, what is the foundation? What's the why? Why are you pursuing that goal? Okay, so and I talk to a leader and he or she will say, okay, I want to build my business by 10% this year. I want to grow my market share by 2%. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to expand into geographic. Okay, what is your why and your why and your why? Why are you doing this? And if they can't come up with a strong answer that is again rooted in who they are, their values, their principles of life, and it's only because they think they need to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's going to bring them satisfaction, lasting satisfaction and joy in life, then we got a problem, right? We got a problem we need to solve, because it's like, okay, if you can't identify the why, if your why is only because I want more, that's fine. Just accept that that's not going to most likely that's not going to bring you the lasting satisfaction and fulfillment you think it will. And so if that's the goal you want to set, be intentional about it and say, okay, this is what I want to do, knowing it's not going to bring me lasting satisfaction and joy. And so then what is your why then? So if your why is, well, because I need to grow, if I don't grow, I'm going to lose market share to competitor XYZ. Okay, is there a problem with losing market share? What if you did lose market share? What if you gain market share? And so it's really diving into each question of really nailing down, okay, what is the why behind this? And it goes right back to our prior of the depth thing.
Yeah. And to share, to talk more about that, the why concept, because I think it's critical to get the idea that to be able to understand that less is more, we have to get comfortable in asking the tough questions. I think it also comes to that as well, because what I find is that a lot of times we're not comfortable with those tough questions. Like imagine you asking someone why, and they can't even, not that they can't articulate why the why. Sometimes the why itself, they haven't come to terms of that why. And I think really asking those tough questions, like why do you want this growth, and having an answer, even though it might be tough. So for example, some people's why could be that they just want the best for their family in terms of giving their children a better education, or be present in their children's life, right? Now that means that to be present means that they will have to be absent somewhere, right? They will have to say no to more, some opportunities, because this is the why I'm doing whatever I'm doing, is because I want to have time with my kids, right? So I think it's asking those tough questions and coming to terms with what the answers is. and say, yes,
Yeah.
I'm ready to leave with being present here and absent there.
Yep. And I love what you said. I think that once a person begins to really understand and embrace their why, it not only empowers them to say yes, but it empowers them even more to say no.
Hmm.
When I
Hmm.
understand, you know what, my life is about these three things or four things or whatever it is, I'm going to say yes to anything that will help me in those areas, and everything else is no.
Hmm.
And now all of a sudden we're building depth and breadth because I'm good at these things. You know what? I'm not good at that over here. I'm sorry. I'm just not, or I'm not passionate about that. Let somebody else do that. The other thing is to really, you talk about, I know you're passionate about personal growth, and you're talking about, goals and those things. Whenever I meet with someone, or I coach someone, or I meet with a leadership team, if one of the first questions I'll ask them is, what are your goals for this next year? Could I review them? Could I see them? And most of the time when I get them, there's like, okay, there's 3 goals for this team, 3 goals for that team, 3 goals, 4 goals, 5 goals, 10 goals. Before you know it, we've got 35 goals for one corporation. And it's like, whoa, 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 time out. 3, pick 3 organizational goals. And then everything else that the teams that do roll up to those 3. And don't have 15 KPIs, have 3. What are the 3 that you need to identify to know that your team is performing and is helping to contribute toward the 3 goals of the corporation? That's where I get really, really passionate and focused about less is more, because most people would say, oh, I need to have 20 goals. If you have 20 goals, you won't accomplish any. If you have 3, you'll accomplish all 3. And it does not seem, that seems counterintuitive, but it works time and time and time again. I can't tell you how many times that I love setting annual goals for myself, personal growth goals, professional goals, whatever. For years, I would set 10, 12, 15. One year I had like 32 goals I want to accomplish. I got to the end of the year, I didn't accomplish a blasted one. The next year I had 2, I accomplished them both. Just amazing how that works.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think one of the things that people, because I like to always, make it very practical, because when I hear people, this kind of conversation, what comes to mind is that, people say, hey, but when I say no, I'm afraid, I mean, people are going to see me as someone who is, I'm just not comfortable with what people are going to say, or how people are going to react to
Mm.
my building depth. So do you want to share how you've been able to, manage or handle that feedback, that fear of what will people say when I begin to say, you know what, I'm not available now, or I can't do this? How do I address that? You know, so do you want to share on that?
No, I'll be happy to. And it's difficult. And I would say that the more that you're wired to please other people, and the more you enjoy pleasing other people, and so the thought of saying no makes you start to sweat. And that's where I was for a lot of my adult life. I'd say, oh, I'm better at it now. But just getting to the place of saying, you know what, if I don't say no, I'm going to spread myself so stinking thin. I'm not going to help anybody.
Hmm.
So basically, I can say yes to 10 things, and I'm going to give you mediocre results for all 10. Or I can say yes to 2 or 3 and give you excellent results because I'm focused, and I'm not overcommitted. And so when I'm coaching someone and they struggle with saying no, obviously there's a lot going on. So you have to start with, okay, so what is it about you? What's in your core? What's in your wiring? What's in your makeup as a person that makes you want to say yes every time you're asked to please someone else? And then it's gradually, step by step, we're kind of doing some rewiring of saying, okay, do you realize by saying yes to this person, this person, this person, this person, this blah, 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 now you're committed to 20 projects. You're stressed out. You can't sleep. You can't focus because you got 20 projects you've committed to. And so what happens is you give a little here, 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 and none of them are happy with you. None of them are satisfied. Sure, you might have gotten the job done, but it wasn't what they expected from you. And so you're actually better off saying, okay, I can pick 3. I can do these 3 now. and then telling the rest, if you don't want to say no, don't say no. Say, I can't do it right now. If you want me to do it, I'm available a month from now, 2 months from now, 3 months from now. If you can't wait that long, I get it. I really understand. Then, I wish you well, or I can help introduce you to somebody else or whatever it is. But it's just getting to the place of saying, I'm really good at these 3 things, and I'm going to do those 3 things. I'm not really good over here, but guess what? I have friends over here that I know are really good about that. They're really good at that and passionate about that. And so I'll introduce you to them.
Hmm. That leads straight into the next question that I have for you around the fear of missing out. I mean, a lot of marketing strategy and all of that use this kind of, this fear of missing out. So they put things and say, hey, it's going to close by this date and all of that. So the fear of missing out often drives people to overcommit and overconsume themselves, So how can we overcome, and I know you've already touched on that, but how can we overcome the fear of missing out and embrace a simpler, more focused approach to life and work? And I want you to really share, because we have a lot of career professionals who listen to this podcast, because the fear of missing out on this other project makes them overcommit, and then they are burning out. Like there's a lot of burnout in the workplace. So how do they, overcome this fear?
Yeah. So I think it goes back to, what is your foundation? What is your why? And what are you committed to? And it's really staying aligned to those things. And so, and also it's just accepting that there's going to be certain things I'm going to miss out on. And guess what? It's okay. It's okay if I don't have the latest and greatest thing. It's okay if I miss out on this experience, because guess what? There's going to be other experiences. What marketing companies do so really, really well is they create this urgency about what it is that they're trying to sell you. And they do it in such a way of saying that, there's never going to be another opportunity like this again in my life. That's rarely the case. And so it's just accepting that, what, this one's got to pass me by. When I started this business 2 years ago, I did it on my own. I don't have investors. So I'm literally bootstrapping this thing on my own. And so I told my family, it's like, I'm doing this for 2 reasons. First of all, I was not healthy in the way that I approached my professional career. And so I needed to rebalance my life. And the second reason is because I believed I was called to this. I truly believe in my heart of hearts, I'm called to do what I'm doing right now. But I knew that there would be a time period. I didn't know how long it would be, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I didn't know, where we were going to have less experiences as a family. We were going to be able to travel. We were going to be able to have this experience. And I'm okay with that. Now, do I have a fear of missing out? Yeah, I have a great fear that my youngest son especially is missing out on some experiences, because I have to say, dude, I'm sorry, we can't afford that right now. Maybe we can at this point. But it's realizing, what? I keep going back to my root, keep going back to my core, my why. This is my why. I'm pursuing my why. The easiest thing for me to do right now would be say, you know what? Screw this all. I'm going to go find a high paying job because I want to make sure I provide, all these experiences for my family. When the reality is that when I did have that kind of income and could provide those kind of experiences, I also was gone 20 weeks a year, 25 weeks a year. And so what my family wanted was more of me. They wanted me accessible, and they would each tell you, we'll gladly go, we'd rather just hang out in the backyard and have a cookout at night and roast s'mores or hot dogs, right, over the fire, than we would be able to travel to Africa. And so it's just really understanding, what, the fear of missing out is often built on urgent messages in order to try to sell you something that they think will bring you lasting satisfaction and fulfillment and purpose in life, and it doesn't. It's a lie.
We're gonna cut that. We're gonna cut that. I'll put that out there because it's true. What you're saying is true, and I think growing up, there's one concept that has always been in my mind, is the concept of delayed gratification.
Big time, man.
It's so powerful, because what I've observed, I remember that back in school then, The fear of missing out drove most of my friends to, not friends, but people around me, classmates, to go do other things. Oh, I want to go clubbing. But I knew that for where I'm going to and, my why, I needed to take time to, rather than beyond just classroom, I had to do also self-education. I had to
Yeah.
get books. I had to study. So I was missing out on those fun, but I was building depth. Now, what happens, when I look back and I see those guys who were all of those places, and not that I'm trying to compare, say I'm where I want to be. I'm still going somewhere, but I can tell that those things, those delayed gratifications are paying off. And I can see, I've had
Amen.
people who reach out to me and ask for some things, and I'm like, but back then they had all those things because they were out there. So I think, now what we have to realize, in this concept, in this idea, in this, in this day and age where things are, I want things now, I want to get things now, I need it now. We have to understand that delayed gratification is so powerful. And the fear of missing out, like you said, is a lie. Like
Mhm.
everything, you know, and that, it goes into every areas of our life. Sometimes, I even to family life. I remember when some time ago we were trying to buy a house and all, and Chris, oh, right now I have to get this big, and I'm like, no, there are priorities. There are things that you have to put into consideration when making decisions, not because of what you're going to miss out, what they're telling you you're going to miss out, right?
Yep.
So I like that you share that, and I mean it's so powerful now, especially in this busy and fast-paced world. Is there something that comes to mind that you want to share on that?
Um, yeah, again, I think you just did. So all I can say to that is, amen, man. What you preach it, because you just brought it. Like, you just summed up perfectly what we're talking about, and I am with you 100%. It's we think that, I have to have, first I have to have a house, then I have to have a bigger house, so then I have to have better furniture, then I have to have a TV, then a bigger TV, then, and it just never ends.
It never ends.
And the reality is, what? I'm satisfied with what I have. Does my neighbor have a bigger TV than me? Yep. Do I care? I did it one time. I don't care now.
Right, right,
So
right. And the earlier we realize it, the better. It saves us a lot of headaches. And
yeah,
because if you look at the market right now in Canada, for example, the interest rate is, I don't know about US, but interest rate is rising, and
yep,
people are scared. People are scared of losing their house. And I mean, people are even losing their house. People are
yeah,
scared. And I remember back then, 5 years ago, who was like, oh, I want to get a house. And I'm like, do you have to get a 500,000 if you can get a 200? But maybe the 200 could even be in a place where, in a good location, where in the next 2 or 3 years, it you know it will appreciate, and it will be easy for you to be able to move on to other things rather than get stuck with a 500 or 600,000.
yeah.
Well, let's not go into real estate.
Big time. No, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Yep.
Okay, let's go. Let's go further in the pursuit of personal and professional growth. How can someone discern between what is truly essential and what is merely a distraction?
hmm Um, I think for each person has to answer that question for him or herself. And really, again, it's figuring out what is aligned. How am I aligned to this versus how would this be a distraction for me? And so, each person has to say, okay, does this fit the criteria by which I live my life? So does it
Mm,
align to my value system? Does it align to my principles? Does it align to my why? And, and I will tell you that, there are certain things that when they come to me, I can tell you right away, they don't align. So I need to say no. But there are other things that come and I'll say, yeah, those absolutely align. And so then I need to take it through a process of, making sure that run it through my filters of, okay, do I have the time? Do I have the capacity? Is this something I can dedicate focus and attention to for the time period they're asking me for, and those things? And if I
mm,
get to the end of those questions and the answer is yes, then I say yes. But if I get to them and say, you know what, I'm passionate about that, I'd really love to do it, but right now I just don't have the time. And so at that point, I'll go back and say, hey, listen, I would really, really love to be able to do this with you, for you, whatever. But my time, I don't have the time right now, but I should have time in about 3 months.
Yeah.
And again, I think that there is tremendous empowerment when we really truly understand our wiring, our values, our principles, and our why, because it allows us to go through this systematic process, if you will. And it may sound like that's laborious. Some people may listen and say, wow, that's really laborious and that's really detailed. But if you're serious about living life intentionally, that's what it takes. It doesn't take me long. It took me, what, 30 seconds to run through a grid of, do I have time? Do I have capacity? Am I passionate? Blah, blah. It doesn't take that long.
Hmm. Yeah, it comes down to that. Like, what are you serious about life? And yes, it comes down to that. Because
Yep.
a lot of times we just tend to, because we feel like it's so complicated, then we just ignore it, right? But if you know that this is the life you want to live, then you have to be able to dedicate to the process to get there. That leads me to the final three questions I'm going to ask. And you can answer these questions in one word, or you can expatiate on the word.
Okay.
Now, first question is, what is your biggest regret when it comes to the concept of less is more? And what have you done differently now? And you can look back and share, say, hey, I did this before, but now I know better, and it can help someone in their 20s.
My biggest regret was putting my career and putting my ambitions ahead of my family,
Hmm.
and realizing, because you can't get back time. That's the one thing that once it's past, it's past. You
Hmm.
can always make more money. You can always, rise on the corporate ladder. You can do this, do this. You can't get back time. And
Hmm.
so I sacrificed a lot of time with my kids. My kids are 23, 20, and 17 now. And at the heart of them growing up is when I was gone, and a huge regret, and I have to live with that. I can't get that time back.
Hmm.
What have I done differently now? The biggest thing I'm doing differently now in running my business is that when I launched this business, I had a wonderful friend who said, don't do it alone, knowing that I couldn't afford to hire anybody. And so I put together a personal board of directors. And so every quarter, I meet with 4 people every quarter for half a day. And literally, there's nothing off limits in my life, personally or professionally. My wife is also on this board. So it's my wife plus 3 people. And we spend a half a day. We talk about the business. We talk about my personal life. We talk about balance. We talk about intentionality. We talk about my why. We talk
Hmm.
about, and I always lay out for them, okay, here's the list of opportunities in front of us, whether they're speaking or they're training or they're coaching, whatever. I lay them all out, you
Hmm.
know, and they help me run them through the grid. There have been a few things where I really wanted to say yes, and my board will look at me and say, okay, explain to me, how does that align? And it didn't. The only thing that it did is it helped fill a need in my bank account,
Hmm.
because they're willing to pay me a lot of money, but yet it didn't align to anything else. And so they're like, okay, no, we're here to help you stay aligned. And it doesn't mean this is not this is not some kind of get rich quick scheme, whatever. It's like that. So they have helped me stay aligned to my purpose and my calling. So that's one of the greatest things I've ever done.
Wow. Wow, that's a life lesson there.
Yep.
Thank you for
Huge.
sharing that. Second question is, what is the best advice you've received when it comes to the concept of less is more and living a fulfilled life?
Um, it's honestly, it's what we've talked about. It's, live life. First of all, let me back up. It starts with accepting reality. And so I needed to come face to face with me. And so I needed to look in a mirror and just say, okay, who are you? What are you doing? And why are you doing it? And really coming face to face and answering those questions honestly.
Hmm.
And then having people that I know love me and care about me. So now my personal board, my wife, and then 3 gentlemen that I absolutely love and adore and respect. And they're all older than me. And so they speak into my life, and basically having them answer the same questions for me, and then helping me stay aligned to, okay, this is the path I'm after. They've read both my books. Obviously the second one's not out yet, but they've had the privilege of reading them already. And so they know my heart, and they know what I want to be, and they know what I don't want to be. And so it's having those guardrails. And I know myself well enough to say, and we can all do this, right? And I've often joked, and it's not a joke. I'll say, give me anything in life, anything that I want to do, whether it's an experience, good or bad, and I can justify why I should do it or why I should have it or whatever it is, regardless if it's actually good for me or not. And so when I have somebody else around me saying, whoa, 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 wait a minute, you're lying to yourself, dude, stop it. So that
Hmm.
answers the question here.
Yeah, that answers the question, and even reminds me, I think one thing that comes from that question or your response is accountability. I think that's
Absolutely.
what it's really is kind of lacking in this day and age. No one wants to be accountable to anybody, right?
Yep.
I just want to do
Amen.
my thing. I want to do me.
Yep.
But that accountability is so powerful. I remember, one of my accountability, my major accountability was my wife. I remember, back in the day we were still dating, and I started my whole, speaking career and all of that. And one day she told me, said, "Hey, you could be making much more, if you rather than spend time going to teach and share, build more depth." That
Mm.
hit me like a sledgehammer. Like I felt I was already there and I should be sharing, I should be all over the place. And it took me time to really process that because sometimes ego gets in the way, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely it does.
And
Oh, man.
I had to come to the point where I said, she's really saying the truth. Like this is reality. And I had to step back. I mean, for almost 2, 3 years, I went off radar, like no booking, nothing, just building depth and studying. And I can tell the difference now, like what I used to get paid speaking back in the day and what I do now. I mean, I don't even sometimes. She, there was a time I recently I showed her the invoice and she said, "You see what I told you then? If you had not listened to me, you probably wouldn't be where you are today, right?"
Uh-huh.
And I said that because what you shared is so important. Having that accountability, people, you call them the personal board of directors. That's a cool one.
Yeah,
Cool way to describe it. But having accountability is so important. Hmm.
it is. And I went far too long without it. I've always had an accountability partner, but that was always usually in just a very narrow area of life. And so this
Life.
has really helped expand that.
Hmm.
And dude, it sounds like you are extremely blessed. If you have a spouse, you have a wife that is willing to say
Oh,
that kind of truth to you,
oh
and
man.
you listened to it, brother. Woo,
Oh man.
I'm
This is
inspired.
I
I'm
mean,
inspired.
what I'm sharing with you right now, I believe someone listening to this needed to hear it. Like what we're sharing right now, because what happens a lot of time is that ego gets in the way. People
Oh
don't want
man.
to be accountable. But if you can just be humble, humility, just be humble to listen. It could be someone whispering in your ears, someone telling you that, hey, this is not the right approach. This is what you should do. But sometimes we just say, oh no, what are they saying? But I'm thinking, I'm saying that someone listens to hear this today. The ego is getting in the way. Be accountable. Be accountable. And
Amen.
we're just learning. Like I'm learning. I'm still learning. I'm not perfect, but yeah. Third question.
Yep.
And this one is around, I know you coach a lot of leaders. You've served as, a trainer and speaker and all. What has, if there is one lesson out of your experience coaching leaders and people who also coach others, what would you say is the most important value that would help you get the fulfilled life that you desire, to get that to that fulfillment? What would be the, if you were to mention one value that we all have to adopt or we have to build or develop, what would you say that is?
You've already said it, my friend, and it's the word humility.
Hmm.
If we're not willing to humble ourselves and realize, you know what, so this has hit me like a ton of my natural wiring is that I'm driven, I'm independent, and I want to do things on my own, and I want to prove to you that I'm better than you think I may be, or whatever it is, right? So that's my natural wiring is to be very prideful. And by the grace of God, I've had things happen over my life that have reminded me along the way that I need other people in
Hmm.
my life. I cannot do this alone. And so my mantra in life now is I cannot do this alone. If I'm alone, I'm going to train wreck this entire thing. I need God and I need other people. And if I don't have that in my life, I'm not exactly sure what my life stands for, quite frankly, because I don't want to do this on my own. It's for years, I would say, I want to do this on my own, do this on my own. And I'm at a stage of my life now of realizing if I do this on my own, I'm screwed. I'm going to train wreck my life. I need other people. And that starts with humility of coming face to face of saying, I can't do this on my own. Or maybe I can, maybe I'm blessed with all kinds of resources. Maybe I can. So that is saying, I won't do this on my own, because of the benefit of having accountability, like you mentioned, of having other people that can speak into my life. Because guess what? I have one perspective, but when I have other people speaking into my life, now all of a sudden I've got 3, 5, 7, 10 different perspectives coming at me. And so, my perspective is this narrow, but now I have 10 people, all of a sudden it's like this, right? And I can see more clearly because I can't see what you see. I can't see what other people see. And I need that feedback. Does that make sense?
Make absolute sense. Make absolute sense. And I think that's a good way to wrap the podcast today. Humility. It's and I like the fact that you mentioned your faith, and because when we look at the scriptures, it says that humble yourself and you'll be exalted. And you can tell that for those who are going to rise to the top. I mean, if you see people who out there that will look up to, one quality that I pick from them, and I can tell, like, all of them that I've met or I look up to, there's one quality, and you mentioned it, is humility.
Absolutely.
And when we can humble ourselves, even in the place of understanding that less is more, because I think you just wrap the whole thing, like the less is more concept is actually humility. Because if you can be humble enough to understand that less is more, then you keep chasing. And oftentimes when we chase things, they run away from us.
Oh, that's really good. I like that. Really good.
I've realized that when you keep chasing and chasing more money, chasing this, it keeps running. And that's why you see people struggling. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Matt. It's almost like we're having a how do I call it? Not a master class, but this is more like a. I think this episode is more. It's a lot of reflection, a lot of reflection. From what we shared today. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Is there any last words you want to share with our audience?
I just end with this. Live life intentionally. Humble yourself. Realize that doing life alone is a very lonely way to do it. And that sounds obvious, but humble yourself. Realize that with God and with people, other people, that you're going to go so much further, and life is going to be so much more fulfilling. And live life intentionally, on purpose, with purpose, and for purpose, and you won't regret it.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. It was a pleasure and a privilege to have you on the show today. I never knew it was going to take this turn, but I feel so strong in my heart that this episode is going to be a blessing to a lot of people. For those of us who are going to be watching on YouTube, please leave a comment. Leave a comment about today's episode. Tell us what you learned, right? And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, leave a rating as well and leave us a comment. Spotify, you can actually put a comment on today's episode and tell us what exactly you took out. What is your takeaway from today's episode? All right. And also to be able to reach Matt, we're gonna have all his details on the show notes. So you have his website and you have the way to be able to reach him for speaking engagements or any other services that he has to offer through Uniquely Normal. Right? Did I get it correctly?
You sure did, man. Well done.
All right. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Until we come your way in the next episode, remember, your growth is personal. No one is going to do your growing for you. No one is going to grow for you. Your growth is personal. Stay blessed and bye for now.
Thank you.